Charles, Mommy Defendant. It's Mother's Day, and there's a lot of mothers out there. How you doing,
Yeah,
Charles?
I'm doing very well, Jason. Thanks for having me back on. I think the world is on fire in many senses in a positive way. I mean, Trump has so many of his detractors are highly paid shills on what passes for legacy media and on campi around the world. But here's a guy who is tougher than the ever-ready bunny. I mean, he says very controversial things because America is in a place where it needs um, controversial solutions that are going to certainly upset the corrupt status quo. And look at all he's done. I mean, he taking on literally taking on the world on unfair trade practices. People say, "Oh no, he's destroying the country. There's going to be inflation," and we'll see the details on the China deal when these emerge. But you'll recall that China made no progress. It was hurling insults, and they had at one stage in this drama they started projecting pictures of Mao and suggesting that lecturing to the U.S. that we need to know our place, and that they'd never talk to us and never negotiate. And over the course of 2 days in Geneva, and I'm guessing there was work done in advance of the meeting. In theory, we have an outline of a deal that the Trump team thinks is good for America. We have an outline of an India deal. We have a signed, I think, UK deal. And, all these talking heads have been saying it's a reckless course. It's going to get used to stratospheric inflation. They didn't notice the inflation under Biden when the price of a McDonald's hamburger package, I think, more than doubled. They
Wow.
weren't complaining then about Biden. They weren't complaining about high oil and gas prices. They weren't complaining about the crime.
Gas is going
Now,
down, I think, Charles.
of course it is under Trump, but under Biden, it doubled,
Yeah.
more than doubled. And
Biden's
now you
eating
have
it.
this. The Democrats are playing Waffle House politics, as you like to point out. They had it all scripted. They figured if they go to this for-profit prison or detention center where these violent criminals are housed, they figured they knew they could get the footage that they got, but they didn't anticipate that this administration, particularly Tom Homan and others, were not going to take this Waffle House bullshit from whatever that guy's name is, the mayor, and the rep who was pushing court and ICE people out of the way, breaking into a facility. Then she thinks that she can clean herself up and go on TV and say, "I didn't push anybody."
It was on
Nor the
video.
videotape. Right. And then all these, remember, you and I, we saw all those protests when we were together walking around in New York, and we both came to the conclusion that they were not spontaneous.
Yeah.
And now people have begun to put together and trace the money flows from George Soros through a lot of these different operations that spontaneously, the ICE thing happened in Newark on Friday, and by Saturday, there are these coordinated protests with placards and same chants and the same idiots with the megaphones and going around and trying to argue as the complete buffoon. Chris Van Hollen, the quote senator, CIA trained senator from Maryland, is
CIA. What
trying.
do you mean?
Well, his parents work for the CIA, I think.
Wow. What?
I think.
I don't. There's.
Uh,
I mean, that's just insane.
right. And so they're trying, what they figured, the opposition here figured they have the weather on their side. Where you are, you're at late spring, you're going into summer. Colleges are emptying of the students who are probably dumber for having spent another year in these various campuses. Probably they don't have summer jobs. And so the Soros machine thinks that they can have these spontaneous protests everywhere against Trump in coordination with the activist district court judges and others. And they thought they were going to basically just jam Trump up. Where, in contrast, over this weekend, I mean, think of what he did. He tamped down tensions between India and Pakistan, as Obama likes to call it. You saw the footage, and I don't know if it's AI generated or not, of Starmer, Mertz, I think it was, and Micron on some train car trying to hide a bag of cocaine and some kind of instrument used to snort cocaine.
I
I don't know if
didn't see
that's,
that.
it's all over my Twitter feed, and the
Wow.
Russian foreign minister has talked about it. They're trying to
Whoa.
pretend that yeah, they're trying to pretend it
Wow.
didn't happen. Yeah. And so the Europeans were pushing Zelensky to stick with perpetual war, something that he wants to do, because the second there's a peace and real elections and accounting, that boy's going to prison if he lives. Trump sees this, and Putin independently offers talks in Istanbul on a lasting peace with no preconditions, beginning on I think the 13th or 14th. And Zelensky and the Europeans, as they were doing their coke together, were trying to resist it. And Trump tweeted out, look, go to Istanbul and meet with Putin. And Zelensky has just accepted he's going. Um,
I
and
saw
that's
that.
and in addition, Trump is setting up now to go to the Middle East this coming week, to Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Qatar, as they pronounce it.
Interesting.
So, what did you do this week? We made a list of 5 things you did this week. This guy is on. He's got more people working for him, obviously, Jason, than you do. But I mean, he's
Yeah.
accomplished a tremendous amount, and doing what my father used to like to talk about. If you're just using technology to lower costs, that's nice, but it's not particularly interesting. If you're using technology to accomplish things that couldn't be accomplished in the same way before, that's
Yeah.
very important. You're doing that with your writing and investigative work, and hats off to this Trump team. They're firing on all cylinders for the moment.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the
Make it,
writing and the investigative work, Charles, and speaking of mothers, uh, I'm also able to do things like visualize Leticia James faking her own father's death with the Cadillac Funding Company. I don't know if you noticed this little graphic here, but he's got the Cadillac. Charles, you got to keep a few thousand around. You wouldn't understand. This is a thing, the Cadillac. But the point is, there's evidence that's emerged just today that Leticia James didn't just wait 13 years to file this probate petition in her father's death. There's very strong evidence, in fact, that she falsified documents and made the death up. I even found current records that seem to indicate the father is living in Queens, but perhaps the most damning and appropriate for Mother's Day is that it is publicly recorded and normal information is available. This is Nellie James, the decedent in Leticia James. This is her mother, and this is the voluntary administrator of the estate. This was filed within days of the death of the mother. We have all the death certificate on file, family tree, funeral bill, notice to interested parties, all this stuff on file. Then when we look at the father, it's a very odd lack of information, and also the petition itself was filed pro se by Leticia James. It looks like she filled it out with crayon, pretty bad, and I just don't believe that the father is actually dead. Maybe he is now, but I don't believe he was when she filed this, and the implications of this are tremendous, Charles, because not only did Leticia James say on a mortgage application that she was married to her father, a wonderful twist for Mother's Day. She might have lied and made up the fact that he was dead. And you raised the excellent point just before we began that this gives rise to all kinds of questions. What happened with Social Security, life insurance? This is a pretty massive crime. And I hope that people will get onto X and read this. I've published it on my X account at JG_CSTT. It's explosive, Charles. And that's only one of the articles that I've published in the last week or so.
Yeah, and I mean, it's also Social Security and other benefits that her parents may have been deriving from the government. I just know from the experience of my father's death that really the instant the death certificate was filed, Social Security was cut off. In the case of my father, so this and it's very unusual for somebody to say that somebody died 13 years ago and then get around
Why did she
to
wait?
file.
Exactly. And she's a lawyer and all that. Now, you also brought up another excellent point, Charles. This whole, and some of the original reporting that has been going on, Sam Antar started this, a lot of other people have gotten involved. It was pointed out that this Cadillac funding thing was involved, and you helped me find this article. You found it actually from 1999 in the New York Times, talking about foreclosures spur a volume business in refurbishing and selling homes. And it seems like a lot of people were trying to clean up screwy mortgages exactly in the way that Leticia James did. This article comes out in the New York Times, June 27th, 1999. She goes and does all this pro se filing with the probate. This is like 4 months later or something, in October 1999. Pretty damning evidence,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. So when I was a young person, let's say 10, 12 years old, riding my bike around New York City, um, and going on the trains, various places, you'd go through Harlem, and Harlem was burned out, as were Bed-Stuy and portions of Queens, and many parts of New York City were derelict because the original owners of some properties just said, fuck it, I'm not going to pay property taxes anymore. You take it. And so the process by which many of these derelict properties then ended up in the hands of politically connected people like Eric Adams and Tish James and others is a scandal that really needs to be investigated in great depth. I mean, it's part and parcel of, it's one of the vectors that I think will help explain A, what truly happened in the credit crisis of 2007 through 9, and B, why the truth about that period has never been fully known. Because so many politicians, much as the brigands preyed on the corpse of the former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe in these privatizations, going in and using their political context to gain opportunities to buy assets at distressed prices, the same sort of thing I suspect has been going on in major cities, particularly Democrat-controlled, blighted major cities. That may explain how Jasmine Crockett has her real estate, and many others, Republicans as well, I suspect. And the journalists, and maybe even journalists, get the same opportunity. They favorite journalists might get the opportunity to buy a property for much less than it's worth with no money down.
I get
You know,
the
you do
opportunity
you
to
do.
be sued for 8 years. This too can be yours.
But wait, there's more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I
but
tell you, Charles, this evidence that I've uncovered today, it blew me away. And to me, it makes kind of the entire Leticia James story make sense. I don't know if you've had opportunity to see the shows I've been doing with Sal Greco and the retired police officers from The Finest Unfiltered, Eric Dim, John McCarry. Those guys know a lot about Eric Adams and all the stuff that they've been doing with Jimmy Rodriguez. You told us about Jimmy Rodriguez even before I met those guys, where he was running the laundromat that Hillary Clinton, did her campaign launch at. This guy, Jimmy Rodriguez, whoops, that's not today's graphic. This guy, Jimmy Rodriguez, he is a known mafia guy, and it's just like, what are senators and the attorney general doing hanging out with this guy? It doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now
well,
it does. They're
now it
criminals.
does. Yeah, now it certainly does. And the nerve of the fawning and failing legacy media giving so much airtime during the 2019 and 2020 campaign cycle. 2023 and 2024 campaign cycle to Tish James and her spurious case against Trump. I mean, think about. I always get so much from contrast, comparing two things and seeing the contrast. Here's this fat moron, fat future felon, getting up and getting not wall-to-wall coverage in her campaign, saying she's going to get Trump, and then with this lawsuit, arguing, sitting around a table and arguing that Trump should be brought under the microscope for a transaction that happened long, long ago. I forget when that loan that he shouldn't have gotten
Yeah,
when that, and
according to her.
what year that, yeah, well, so she's going to make literally a state case about Trump securing a loan opportunity to help a business deal go across the line. And in a case where nobody was harmed, right? Trump,
Nobody even
or
complained. There wasn't a
yeah,
complainant.
no, right. And the matter is something that happened long, long ago. And this, I mean, if this were, I don't know, Mother Teresa, I'm told, is not the best example, and Gandhi is not the best. Pick somebody who is,
Stormy
purer than the
Daniels.
driven. Yeah, Stormy. No. But if Tish James had an immaculate record, right, and did what she did, I'd still want her in prison, because what she's done. Now, for a moment, forget everything you've just uncovered. By going in and saying, in New York, a borrower cannot be certain that he, she, or it will be immune from prosecution by a politically weaponized idiot
Yeah,
and a
20 years
fawning
later or
legacy.
whatever.
20 years later, only a fool at this point would do a
Yeah,
major business project in New York City.
yeah.
Only a fool.
It's bad.
Because until the system is cleaned out, and then you discover what you unpacked here, that somehow this brazen future felon was so mired in filth and corruption. I'm amazed that she even passed a law school course and holds a law license.
I mean, I think we're
let
really
alone
looking at very serious psychopathy right here, Charles, because it's so brazen what she's done, so insane what she's done. It's almost like a plot of a Martin Scorsese movie or some kind of a Batman thing where the district attorney is doing this. And don't forget, this is the same case where Michael Cohen gets this HELOC loan from First Republic Bank, $500,000 against marital property where he doesn't tell the wife. So that's a fraud right there. And Andrew Weissman, it's the same bank that he gets $1 million from a couple of years later when they are 5 days away from insolvency and about to be, bailed out by the FDIC. And there's just so much evidence that all of these people lied, yet what they do is just go all over the news with idiots like Andrew Weissman, Norm Eisen, who everybody saw me yelling at on the street. I'm just sad, Charles, that, back in May 2024, I think, I'm just sad I didn't know all of this then, because the yelling at Norm Eisen would have been so much better. I could prosecute the guy now.
Let's hope he is prosecuted.
Cool? That's the one and only reason I would want a law license, is to now become a prosecutor. I could nail these people.
As you should. And what about, the judge in that case, the Trump
Juan Merchan,
case?
That's the same case, exactly. They're all so conflicted. It's terrible.
With the daughter, in the political consulting firm that taking all this money.
She could fake his death. It's the perfect time.
It's just amazing. Well, you might, in getting to the bottom of this, I appreciate that Robert James is a common name, but there may be a record of his Social Security number somewhere. If he's dead, I think you can get it. And
I tell you, Charles,
that may help.
That sort of stuff, I think I'm going to leave to the FBI now, because they are already prosecuting her. And the truth is, there's so many other things that I'm not trying to pass it off.
Right.
But that would be super difficult, I think, for me to get, and very, very easy for them to get. And I mean, as I said, this is just one of the cases that I've been writing articles about. We had this thing went to 2.3 million, the hidden empire of Tom Tillis, and there's still a lot of work to be done on that. I'd like to continue on that. But then yesterday I did a whole expose of the Lawfare campaign that's just unfolding right now in SDNY, because on Friday they released a trove of previously classified Eric Adams documents that reveal all kinds of craziness. And in my view, if people have read this article, it really supports my theory that I've been building the whole time, that Emil Bove has been working against Trump and is a Lawfare operative, and that Trump has entered an extremely dangerous moment with this case, because they are going to use it to claim that I had a conclusion here. So they basically started this by letting Eric Adams walk. Then they're going to start to push this fake story that Trump pressured the Department of Justice to drop these charges to help a political ally. And the claim that Adams' cooperation was part of an illicit deal to help Trump. And this will allow them to try to hit Trump with some charges that'll have teeth as far as impeachment goes, obstruction of justice, etc. And, you know, if they take control over the House, they're going to just impeach him again nonstop. And again, people might look at this and say, how the hell is Jason figuring this out? Or what is this kind of thing? But the truth of the matter is, Charles, this is 8 years of investigating these people that's finally now being distilled down. And it's just a coincidence that all the people that are like trying to destroy New York City, destroy Donald Trump, they're the same people that have been trying to destroy me for the past 8 years. I think because I jammed my nose into what they were doing to try to destroy you over your investigation initially into Mommie, Defendant, Hillary Clinton.
There's a song, I'll have to find it, where part of the lyrics is "She's going down."
Right.
And, you know, I think one of the reasons that I was prepared to go after this mess is I appreciated that an entity that is fundraising, soliciting donations, that doesn't actually exist, the ongoing act of fundraising resets the statute of limitations. So these people are constantly fundraising. While we're talking, they're fundraising, using the internet around the world, in particular from a base in New York City, in New York State, where they maintain two residences. So they don't have the defense, in my opinion, and again, I'm not a lawyer, of saying, oh, you're bringing up old news back to 1997. This is, you know, the statute has passed. Not on solicitation fraud, it hasn't. And they should have shut this thing down long ago. They should have shut it down, frankly, after 2004. They should have gone to the University of Arkansas and said, we built this building. We did what we said we were going to do. All of the records are there. And why don't you just, you know, you can have your Clinton School of Public Service. We want nothing to do with that. We're turning our attention to solving the world's problems in a new vehicle that we're going to establish in New York. That would have worked for them, but they didn't do that. They became incredibly sloppy. And they're just serial grifters and fraudsters. They can't help themselves.
Yeah.
It's another example, but of psychopathy. I mean,
yes.
How can you continue to do this? They're pushing 80. You know, Bill is looking pretty shaky. Hillary, you know, I don't know what mechanism she uses to go out in public anymore, but I mean, she has the uncanny ability to be wrong on most every issue at precisely the wrong time to be wrong. She'll go out in some pompous way and accuse Trump of something he's not doing, but she's actually doing, and be immediately shredded. But because she has a great role, you know, a great contact list of media types and media fixers, and because she has all these different perches now, she's a chancellor of Queens College in Northern Ireland. I think there's a Hillary Clinton School of Lawlessness somewhere, an actual thing called the Hillary Clinton School of Law. I mean, Jesus. And there are enough nincompoops. I mean, you take that, you call her the Red Devil, Jen Psaki, you know, who goes in to replace Rachel Madcow disease and gets up there as one day where her total viewership was 138,000 or something like that. The next day it's like 63.
Oh,
that's not a good trend.
Like a YouTube show.
Well, but yeah, but everybody understands. I mean, at this point, you know, in the old days, back to when I first started meddling in the area of media was 2007. And then Wall Street Journal article, particularly if it was a news article, not an opinion piece, carried some weight because people understood that journalists had to have double, triple sources. The Wall Street Journal was a mainstream publication that was widely subscribed to and watched. So to get an article, to convince a journalist to write an article about something you cared about was a worthy effort. Nowadays, I give a shit what is in the Wall Street Journal. I don't have any cats. You know, it's cheaper than cat litter. But so if I had cats, so maybe I'd buy one newspaper and use it for the cat litter. But I mean, New York Times, Wall Street Journal have been perpetually wrong on every major topic of consequence since the fall of the Berlin Wall. They are pro-globalist, pro-unregulated globalism. They are tools in the process of misleading the masses into subservience. And I feel so much better. I mean, I have every day I used to spend maybe 2 to 3 hours reading The Economist, Newsweek, Time, Financial Times, New York Times, all these different things. I haven't even looked at the cover of any of
But
those
you're
things, and
better informed now even than you were then, I think.
far better informed, far better
Yeah.
informed. And what I experienced personally in many different formats is when you go through and you're making progress and you get to the core of exposing, Rupert Murdoch has a problem with the Clinton Foundation. He wrote a check to an entity that doesn't exist, and he is all into this climate change bullshit. And the entity that he wrote the check to was the Clinton Climate Initiative, which has never existed. And
Yeah.
he made a big deal of it in I think the 2006 Clinton Global Initiative, the second meeting in New York. Bill was able to stand and say, "Look, I've got Rupert Murdoch. It's a bipartisan gathering. I've got Rupert Murdoch and I've got Barbara Streisand, and they're both giving me money to
Ridiculous.
fight climate change."
Barbara Streisand has a picture of herself with Bill Clinton on the piano in her house, and also Marvin Hamlish. But Charles, we're out of time. We're going to head over to the sponsor exclusive segment in the First Amendment Forum. I really hope that people will join us. I have been getting very little sleep the past few days, and I hope I've been providing people with some news that I'm proud of it. People aren't getting this anywhere else. This is all stuff in the public domain. I don't have any secret sources telling me any of this stuff. I've just, as you pointed out, figured out how to use AI to, in many cases, just take evidence I've literally been gathering on these lawfare criminals for 8 years. So now the next phase is going to be to figure out how to use it to kind of restore what they've taken from me in all of my cases. But for now, we'll just carry on in the First Amendment Forum. I hope that people will join us on Patreon and Subscribestar, subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. I want to thank everybody who's staying with us on Odyssey. They're still working through this issue of getting a new credit card processor. So if you're on there, you still have access. I think you're getting free access, basically, to the sponsor exclusive content, and that's all right. I'm happy to support the supporters on Odyssey, but people who want to join us who aren't there yet can get to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and you can also see not a simulcast, but the broadcast. The exclusive content will be on X right after we're done, so people who subscribe to me on X at JG_CSTT, you'll get that as well. We'll be right back. We're going to talk about Zelensky and Barbara Streisand and all the stupidest people around.